Today, we're talking about the electrical. These are wires, or actually it's shrink wrap and some connectors, so, you know. Rastafarian here. So when I first started on this whole adventure of building out a van, I knew that a good portion of my money was going to be going to my electrical power build out. And I'm probably not the best to talk about it, so it's going to be the very dumbed down version of electrical for van lifing. If you do want to see somebody who dives into it in great detail, there's a YouTuber, I believe his name is Travels with Jazz. He's out of Australia, but I think he's an electrician, so he's a lot more knowledgeable when it comes to this kind of thing. This is more of like the electrical for dummies version. Probably worse than that. When you go to do your build out, you have to figure out everything that you want to put in the van, what things run off electricity, what the power the amount of power that those things draw, and then a way to power those things. When I started to do my math and write down all the things that I wanted in it, like an AC unit, a refrigerator, and even run an Xbox with a projector, I had to figure out how much power was going to be pulled during a given day. So I did some calculations. None of them were that accurate, I guess, because you don't use things 24/7. You just use them when you need to. So that was kind of guess and checking. So as long as you're in like the right ballpark. But one of the big things that I figured out, and with what a lot of people say, is make sure you have more than you need. Eventually I realized I needed help, and that's when I reached out to Trent and Allie. They're another YouTube channel that had this cool build out video, which I used to get a lot of the items that I have in this van. So I reached out to them. They seemed to have a good solar setup and battery setup, and like right away Trent got back to me and filled me in on the best route to go. Originally I thought I would get these lithium-ion batteries, but those are really expensive. Even though they're extremely efficient and they're lightweight, you don't really get the biggest bang for your buck. If you're going to be living in the van for several years and you want those batteries to last a really long time, lithium's probably the way to go. But with what I wanted to do, I just wanted a lot of power for a good amount of money because I only had so much money set aside. I ended up purchasing two VMAX 200 amp hour 12 volt deep cycle batteries. They're heavy, they're like 150 pounds a piece. And they also told me my solar setup, which was two 300 watt monocrystalline panels that would run straight down into a charge controller, which would then charge my 400 amp hour batteries, which is plenty enough to power everything I have in the van. The solar is almost its own subject, so we're gonna do that in a separate video. I think every episode that we do, I'm gonna be complaining about bugs.
Dude, I am getting bugged out.
Because they're everywhere and they just suck to the moisture of my eyeballs. I took the budget I had and started ordering a bunch of stuff. I got almost all the things that I needed for my electrical build out, minus, you know, some butt connectors and some wires because I didn't know exactly how much I needed. I just bought a certain amount. And then I got my big old batteries, and I had to go pick them up at the FedEx Freight because they were so heavy. And luckily I had the rental van at the time because my van was being worked on. So they're heavy. Since we're jumping through time, you're gonna notice my bad haircut come into play. God, what a bad haircut. Oh, I'm like embarrassed to see myself on camera. Yeah, I hate it. Okay, so we decided to put them in the back passenger side of the van. Originally I thought, oh, we'll put it on the driver's side, but we ended up going on that side because we put the water tank on this side since the shower was over here. Once we had built the box, we picked up a bunch of shiplap, as you can see. This is a full carload right here. And we're gonna put it in the side thing. All right, so this is my handy dandy table saw. And I think it's been handed down from generation to generation, so it's custom rigged. To get it going. Oh, you should have to do, zipper. Like a charm. Got her going. Oh, faithful. Nine and 3/4. We decided to put the inverter in there because we wanted to start running all of the AC wiring along with the DC wiring. And since we had that up, we thought, okay, let's throw the fuse box on there and the charge controller so we knew where everything was gonna sit.
Not going anywhere.
So if you're running AC appliances, you need to be able to transfer the DC currents coming from the battery into AC currents to then run into the appliances that you're running, like my fridge and my air conditioner. Trent recommended this 2000 watt Ames power, or just Ames inverter. Before we started to do all the AC wiring and DC wiring, we wanted to wire the battery up to the inverter.
So make sure I'm flat there, flat there. And I found out gentle tapping is better.
So to connect it to the batteries, we made sure we ran the batteries in parallel. And the reason we did that is because they're 12 volt batteries and all my appliances are 12 volt appliances. Yeah, that's why we did that. Oh yeah. Make sure to put a circuit breaker within your positive line so that you don't end up screwing up your batteries if too much power comes through. Oh, and then we made sure to test if the batteries had power by rigging up the fan and seeing if it ran. So we're dummy wiring up the fan. Holding in and on. And it did, it worked great. Once we had the inverter and everything there, we did kind of screw around with the AC wiring a little bit since that was like the quickest thing we could tackle. What are you doing? As you can see, Kyle is mounting the outlet boxes, which we were able to find these like little 1-inch, they're shallow depth. So look, hidden. Like a kid hiding behind a small tree during hide and go seek. We're gonna put an outlet down there for the fridge and air conditioner. We got an outlet here for the bedroom, and then we're gonna put an outlet over here on that fake wall, and then also an outlet, one above, for the kitchen area. Got ourselves an outlet cover. I'm gonna be ordering outlet USB combos. So this is just for the fridge and the AC. And then we got 25 feet of 12.2. We also got some of these staples. So we're gonna use those to hold the wire to the wall and the posts and wherever we wanna put more shit. You just need AC power for your outlets, because you're gonna plug your AC powered items into those outlets. Damn it, another cat fight. She keeps charging him.
So I'm running from inverter to AC and refrigerator plug. And then I'm running back out of that plug to our first receptacle, which is here in the bedroom. Then need to run from here. I'll run a wire out from here, because it's going to be right here somewhere, right?
Probably over here.
So then I'm going to wire staple this nice and neat along here.
You know, you can only lay things out as best you can before you actually start putting appliances in, figuring exactly where they're going to land. So basically, all of the outlets are ran through one circuit, if that makes sense. Just like you would in a room of your house. Once we had that, we kind of just guessed where the outlets were gonna go. We had a good idea, but we loosely attached them to the boards and then we built around those. But we made sure they worked. We plugged our AC unit into it and the fridge into it, made sure we had power and the inverter was providing the proper amount of power, and we were good on that end. Something's happening. So for the DC wiring, you kind of have to just imagine how it's gonna be. And so I took the lights that I did have and I started wiring them up and then just taping them on the ceiling where I thought they would land within the van. So to run all the electrical or the DC wires, I'm just using these insulated wire connectors. And then I've got some 14 gauge red wire with 14 gauge black wire for my negative. And then I'm just gonna crimp these bad boys on, tape up the wires to the ceiling, or probably the side, run them through the sides here, and then get them back to my fuse box over there. And then for the lights, I'll just like tape them into place because we don't really know exactly how they're gonna fit up there with the ceiling panels. Right? Is that what they'd be called? The ceiling boards? Whatever we're gonna put on the ceiling. I got these LED recessed dome lights. They're warm white, 12 volt DC, 2.6 watt. I got 10 of them. Seen people do this thing where they take their two wire ends and when they have like a bunch of it and it's all split up like this, they tape it to the end of a drill and then they spin it around and it tightens it up. Ugh, that's not working right. As you can see, not so much there. By the end of it, I had gotten like 11 lights, 2 big fans, and then a vent within the bathroom. And so I had to dummy up DC wiring for all of those things to run all the way back to the fuse box back there. This is one of the reasons why we didn't fill the cavities with insulations off the get-go, because we wanted to be able to feed the wires through those open cavities, like the ones in your teeth, to get them to the back. So now I've got some wires running all the way through the back, which is good. But your big jumble of wire, ran them down there, through there, and out right by the fuse box. And I then labeled them right kitchen LED, passenger side, blah, blah, blah. I had gotten the basics for the DC wiring done in Indy before I had to move out, which I don't know if I should state in every video, but I started to build the van out with only a month and a half left at my lease before I had to actually like move out and live in the van. And then I took a full week off of work to then just work on the van like 12 hours a day for an entire week with my dad and his buddies to get it livable. And so I ran out of time. I only had the basic wiring for the DC wiring set up, and then I was moved out of my house and to my dad's for that week. And during that entire week, we worked on the rest of the wiring. All filled up, ready to go. A few other things that I didn't quite get to were things like the cell booster. That required some electrical to be ran back. The furnace and the hot water heater, I ran wiring for that too, even though they weren't in place, just so that when we did drop them in there, we could connect them quickly and they'd already have a hookup in the back. We gotta run to Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever to get the remainder of the wire, because I've got to run a couple more DC wiring things to the battery, so I still have to hook up the pump and then the 2 garage LEDs that I have. Once those are all ran, we have like 20 things that are running DC power, and so that's what this crappy diagram is for. That took quite a bit of time, and it took a lot of wiring, so be patient with it and just make sure to give yourself some extra wire, because I kind of cut it close on a few of them and had to put some extensions on there to get them to the battery area. We worked at fishing these down and got rid of the mess here, and so those are going to go down, up, and then we're going to drill holes there. These came out too short, so I got to extend those. But
that rat nest.
One of the things that we did run into once I had all the DC wiring ran to the back was figuring out how we were going to get all those spaghetti wires into a fuse box that had 6 bays. What we ended up doing was getting this terminal block and running all of the LED lights, including the fans, to this terminal block, and then bridging the connections together so it was almost like one giant wire, and then like all the grounds together the same way, and then taking them and only taking up one little bay on the fuse box. The other thing we did was kind of double up on the way things connected on that fuse box. So say the water pump and the toilet, those went together in a bay. And then the furnace and the hot water heater, those went together in a bay. Electrical for dummies. I'm not the guy, which I've said this in other videos, I'm not the guy. I am not the guy. Okay, once we had everything hooked into that fuse bay or the terminal, I don't even know what it's called. I gotta figure out what it's called. And then we put all of our little 10 amp fuses in there. We saw that it was running. The power of the lights worked and the fans worked, and yay, hooray, it worked. So once we knew everything was working, I went back and I figured out how I wanted to connect things together to then put them to switches. And so there was only a handful of things that needed to be hooked to switches, which were these 4 lights in the living room, 2 lights for the kitchen, 1 light for the bathroom, 2 lights for the bedroom, 2 lights for the garage, and then the water pump. That's actually quite a lot of things. So I guess it did take me a while, but it's basically just hooking everything together that you want to be on one switch, and then putting it in one end and then let it come out the other end so that you're just breaking that circuit with the switch. The switches were put in a basic area, but then we ended up relocating a few of them, like this one that controls this room. This was originally over here, but I wanted it on this side. It made more sense. So that was everything for DC, and that's a pretty straightforward process. You have a positive and you have a negative, and they need power. Let's jump into the voltage relay sensor. Now the voltage relay sensor is the thing that enables you to charge off of your van's battery while it's running. It's great to have solar when the sun's out, but say at night when you're driving, or when it's a crummy rainy day, or when it's winter and gray overcast, you're not going to be getting that solar power that you would say on a really bright sunny day. So you need other ways to charge your van. When we wired it, it's pretty straightforward. We used 4-gauge wire to run from the batteries through this voltage relay sensor up to the battery of the van, which is inside, the access point is inside the van, right under the driver's feet. Hey, you gonna hook the battery up? We're gonna try to hook up that voltage relay sensor. Nailed it. Voltage relay sensor to the battery right here. So you gotta open that up. I'm currently pulling all the plastics out here so I can get access back there to those cables and run them in down here, well, along the edge here, because as you can see, when I pulled the battery case off, these cables are all running in here, which means they're all hidden underneath this panel here. And so these were all just standard Phillips heads, you know, and there's like, what, 1, 2, I think there's one there, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then there's one that's wedged all the way under there that I got now pull this off to get to that, because these were also Phillips. But then these are those TX, like this one was a 25, this one's a 20, this one's a 20, and I'm hoping that's it. I can just pull this off. And it's not looking that way. The 3 pieces had to come out to get here. So now we're gonna try to use this hole that's pre-existing. It pokes out to the other side. I'm just gonna grind it wider to fit 2 cables. There you go. 2. So I fished the wire through, we taped it, and now I'm gonna see if I can pull it through this way. I'm through. I'll pull it all the way, I guess. So we ran them through, ran them up. There was this little inlet here, this little bracket that was already open for some other cables that are clearly not in this van. And what we did was we ran these cables in there, which will sit underneath that rubber, which goes underneath the plastics. And then I used that pencil grinder to put notches for it to run through, and then I shaved a notch through there with the blade so that this can run, and we're gonna connect it to the frame here. I just stole a bolt off the battery housing and put it into the frame of the body for my ground. So I sanded down around, got the paint off, and put the ground here. And I took the bolt from here. Negative, hooked there. I stole this bolt, just put it there. This thing's on here good. It's not going anywhere. And then I hooked straight in to the positive of the battery and ran it back. Here's the positive running right there. Okay, hooked up. Let's see if this goes back on to cover it up. So this has a lip on it now.
Looks like it's getting misted pretty good.
Which fucking sucks, but oh well. On this side, since we ran the cable here, I had to cut out a notch in the plastic there so it'll slide under. But then it fit really nicely behind the couch here, and then behind the bathroom, and through there and back to the batteries. When you kick your van on, once this battery hits a certain voltage, it'll kick back. This little red light on that thing kicks on, and it starts charging those batteries up. And at first we wired it the wrong way. We had our wires crisscrossed. There is a little manual on the that comes with it that tells you how to wire it up. We had just done it backwards. So Kyle and I spent some time troubleshooting it. Okay, that's another thing too, is that when it was hooked up prior,
It wouldn't shut off.
there was a red light and it was always on. So I'm gonna go kick it on and we'll see if that thing kicks on with it.
All right, so now it's on. 13.5 here. So go ahead and shut the van off.
1273.
12.73. Is it dropping it on? That shut off.
It did?
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's going back up. 12.8. 12.81.
So that's good. Go ahead and
12.82. So it just turned off when the battery went below
12.7.
Yeah, we figured it out, and now every time I kick the van on, it charges the batteries. It's nice. I say that. It's nice. It's nice. It's efficient. So there, I had solar and a voltage relay sensor to charge my batteries. That's 2 ways, but guess what? I wanted 3. So I did the shore power thing. And the way you do that is you take that 12-2 wiring, you hook it up into the back of the inverter, and you run it out the side of your van. Okay, so what we're doing now is basically installing the shore power outlet on the side of the wall, which means I gotta drill a hole through. Luckily, we had the right hole saw size, so we don't have to go and buy a 4th one. First try, because we only get 1 try. Ooh. Camera to camera.
the bug rock? That one? It's just a bug. We're using 1-inch self-tapping screws. We've got our shore power. Didn't put this on. Oh. Well, I just gotta take this off. Locked in.
And that whole process of getting the outlet on there was pretty simple, but figuring out how to get the inverter to kick over to shore power mode was a whole pain in the ass.
So we didn't get it to work. It's probably because we don't know how to use the inverter. But right now we got power going into it, no power coming out. So there's probably a setting we just don't know.
So then I reached back out to Trent and Alley and they said connect these 2 green wires to complete the circuit. I don't know exactly what those things do. I'm just saying what they told me. And so I hooked them together.
Those 2 cables,
You get a male and a female
which we thought they were both
for
males
something
or
extra.
yeah, like separate grounds. But I think if you connect them,
Flip switch. Oh, you got slow.
inverter mode. Still not flipping to that AC.
That didn't do it. And so then I was looking through some other guys' RV videos and I found they had the same inverter, and all he did was take the number 4 little toggle switch, flipped it from 50 hertz to 60 hertz, and it kicked over.
So we were having an issue with the inverter from switching this inverter mode to AC mode, which is when you plug it into shore power. There's a dog here that I don't know.
Yeah, while we were wiring, one of these like 8 houses down, neighbor dogs came running up like a little, my dog Skip, and Rocky's like, "Ooh, what, stop." But that dog didn't give a shit.
There's these 5 dip switches back here, and they're all switched off. And to have it go from 50 hertz to 60 hertz, you needed to flip dip switch 4.
So Ty's gonna plug that in, you're gonna see it's gonna flip to there and then to fast charge, and then everything should run off of shore power. There it goes. Took a second. So it took a second to realize what I was doing, switched over to AC mode, and now it's on fast charge.
That's all it was. Flicking a little toggle switch, that's all. So hopefully you guys, if you end up buying that inverter, this will clear that up for you. Because I spent a lot of time figuring that out, and it stressed me out because I needed that AC unit to be working, living in this thing at the end of August. It was hot. I think that covers my electrical in the dumbest way possible, in the simplest way possible. I'm not gonna jump into the amount of power each item pulls. I have a list of all the items that I've purchased that you can look at either on the van reveal video or the electrical components that I bought to wire this thing up in this video, so you can do your own math and figure out what does and doesn't work. Because sometimes, hey, I'll use a blender and that changes things up. So you can do a basic amount of math and figure out what you need. The battery setup I have has plenty of power. I do play Xbox off here. I've only drained it down one time because I ran heating pads, but that's a whole other subject. So that's it for this video. We'll have a separate video for the solar that I have, which is part of the electrical, but that was an entire process in itself. So we just made its own video. Watch the other videos, bro. I don't know, like lick a 9-volt for me, man. Finger guns. This is my subscribe, like, subscribe, click like, Instagram. Next video, I don't know. Quit watching me.